And let's finish this, the fourth chapter of A Gathering of Gargoyles, which is called The Sea of Dust, and that is where Ariel is traveling right now. Approaching shore, Ariel came aware of a hollow booming. She saw spray flying ahead of her, starlit dust finer than fine, then glimpsed through the valley of waves, rocks jagged as dog's teeth. The shining combers leapt over and between. Ariel took the tiller and sail lines in hand. She tacked for an hour along the coast, but the rocks stretched endlessly, barring the shore. Does it go on forever? She wondered at last, when her arms had grown so sore they were numb. Dawnlight touched the peaks beyond the shore, guiding them in its harsh white glare. Then suddenly, beneath the boat, she felt motion. The craft tilted. One skate lifted from the dust. Ariel nearly lost her balance. She luffed sail and leaned. The craft began righting itself, but the current had swept her much closer to the shore. Ariel struggled with the lines, trying to tack the little boat away. A narrow headland jutted into the sea not half a mile before her. A tall tower stood upon its tip, high above the waves which whipped around the headland's bend like rapids, leaping the teeth of the rocks. Two lines of reef ran parallel here, overlapping their curves in a brief corridor. The inner line petered out just before the outer curved sharply inward, out of sight beyond the headland's bend. Ariel saw them, running ahead of her, just under the surface of the green and shining sea, a broad ribbon of reddish rose, some current of different-colored dust. It undulated like an eel through the narrow passage. She followed it. Rocks closed around her on both sides. She felt the racing red current beneath the skates, the pull of the sail of wind whipping around the bend. The wall of rocks to shoreward ended. The right curve loomed. Ariel leaned, tacked, luffed sail with all her strength. She felt the right skate grate upon the stone. Its pull splintered. The craft leaned hard to port, trying to turn. She felt the tiller grace the rocks, groaned, split in her hand. The hold buckled underfoot. The mast toppled. She felt the sail pulling free, beginning to drag her. She grabbed frantically at anything. Something hard and silk-wrapped came away in her grasp. Her hand slipped on the sail line, and the sail snatched away. It billowed toward shore. Ariel found herself sinking. She floundered, trying to wave, but nothing was solid under her feet. Incoming waves surged, shoving her. She pitched forward, closed her eyes, and held her breath. The beach lay 30 paces off, and she could not reach it. She was smothering in dust. Something underneath her heaved, lifting her, carrying her toward shore. She felt air around her once again and gasped. Blinking, she tried to see. The green of the sea had turned vermilion. Just for a minute, her knees and palm felt something solid, rough as overlapping shingles, warm to the touch, not cool like the fine frictionless dust. Then she was ashore, dashed against the hard, flat stones. Gasping, she crawled forward out of the surf. Something dragged along the ground beside her. She saw with surprise that it was her bandolin, still wrapped in Haddon's yellow robe. Ariel's limbs gave out. About her legs, dry spume ran like water through the interstices of the rocks. She rolled onto her back, stared up into the black dawn sky. A huge head, fringed with vermilion feathers, rose from the sea and stared at her with serpentine, unblinking eyes. That image of the serpent's eyes remained in her dreams until Ariel awoke. It was day. She lay on the warmth of hard, scaly shore. She brushed the dust from her eyes and raised her head from the dry shingle. Light lay upon the headland now, though the broad breach below was still in shadow. Her nightmare of the serpent's head was gone. She rolled onto her belly, pushed herself to her knees, and realized that she still held the silk-wrapped bandolin. She fumbled with the robe, unwound it hurriedly, but the little silver-wood instrument seemed undamaged. A short distance from her lay the wreckage of her craft. She rose and went to it, but the wood was in splinters, the hemp-cloth sail in shreds. Her provisions had all been swept away. Ariel sighed and champed her teeth. Her stomach shifted against itself. I shall never reach the Sibylline Orme, nor find the lost lawns of Westernice, she told herself. If I starve to death on this beach, She laughed a little. Truly, now is a time when I could make use of the Darrow's velvet pouch. Just as she was turning away from the wreck, she caught sight of a stirring in the broken hold. In a moment, her crystal dust shrimp emerged from a pocket of dust, waving its tiny pincers. Ariel found herself laughing again, knelt, and put it in one fold of her garment. Well, she said, we shall see what food may be found to feed both of us. The beach behind lay empty as far as she could see. The sheer cliff before seemed at first to be featureless white stone, but drawing near, Ariel spotted a stair cut into the rock. The steps were only a half-pace wide and steep. Ariel climbed slowly. Reaching the top, she saw the headland was very narrow. Beyond, a strip of beach ran off into the distance, beneath the same white cliffs. She found herself very near the round stone tower. A tree grew just at the tower's base. Its slender trunk was crooked and many-branching, with dark reddish skin and small pale leaves. Hanging upon the nearest bough, just at level of her eye, Ariel saw a fruit. It was only half the size of her doubled fist, and made in lobes so that it looked almost heart-shaped, rose-gold in color, very dark. It shone like amber in the morning light. The fruit was warm to her touch. Solstar had baked it. Its smooth skin was covered with fine hairs, like bee's fur. It came away easily from the stem when she pulled on it. The crystal leaves tinkled. The gnarled branches swayed. Its aroma was like honey browned in cinnamon. Ariel felt weak. She brushed the fuzz. It fell away like reddish dust. Beneath the skin was gold. She bit into the fruit. Its nectar was warm and sweet, the flesh tender and tasting of spice. Ariel swallowed, savoring. Her weariness began to fade. A few more bites left only the hard seed, the last scrap of fruit. She began feeding the dust shrimp. Thief! Ariel turned in surprise. Stealer of apricots! The voice came from the tower behind her. The dust shrimp hid itself in the fold of her shift. A person, very ragged and bent, approached in a doorway to one side of the tree. Thief of my apricots! Thought you might simply have one and be off. The thin figure hobbled toward her using a stick. Ariel stared. Grassy weeds grew across the threshold. The tree stood unpruned. The tower within was dark. I did not know anyone lived here, she began. Didn't know, the old person cried. Thought the tower built itself, I vow. It picked up and arranged its long, shabby robe. A body cannot doze a moment, but thieves come slinking. I am no thief, insisted Ariel. I did not know the tree was yours. I have just come a very long way and have had no food or drink for hours. Not my doing, the other snapped. Only travelers across the sea of dust may taste my apricots. I am a traveler across the sea of dust, Ariel said. The person blinked. Impossible! No one has come across the Mar in years. I have just come, answered Ariel. I wrecked my craft upon the rocks. The person peered at her with narrowed eyes, then hobbled to the cliff's edge and gazed over. Yes, so I see your boat, it murmured, coming back. Smashed into bits, wonder you weren't along with it. Well, you are welcome to the fruit in that case, but you must give me the seed. Ariel realized. She still held the stone in her hand. The old body had snatched it from her before she could offer. What will you do with it? The other only snorted, turning the stone over in bony hands, seeming lost in thought. My name is Ariel, Ariel added in a moment, and I have come from Isterness. The other stirred. Isterness, do you mean? She nodded. The person peered at her again. You don't dress as those that used to come from Isterness? My first home was Terrain, though I have lived in Averick since. This garment is from Pendar. Well travelled, the person mused. I take it you mean your kith came from Terrain. Ariel shook her head. I have no kith. I was bought motherless, a babe. Bought! The other exclaimed. Bought! Then it shook its head, murmuring. Hard times that see babes bought in Terrain. Elsewhere, too, I'll be bound. If in Terrain, what a long time I have been dozing. It turned back to her then. But I see you are no longer a slave, travelling storier. Is that what puts you on the road? Ariel fingered the strap of her bandolin, slung from one shoulder. So I hope to become. The other said nothing, seemed deep in thought once more. What are you? She ventured. The person sighed. Oh, I keep the tower, I tend the tree. It stared back away toward the doorway. Come with me if you would see what I'll do with the seed. And that is the end of chapter 4.